Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a stack of sources today, and they're all tackling this problem that, well, pretty much every business is facing now. Just the sheer amount of data.
Mm.
And, not the neat, tidy stuff. We're talking about the unstructured data.
Yeah, the messy stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Images, videos, all those emails, sensor data, call logs. I mean, it just goes on and on, doesn't it?
It really does. Some of the material actually calls it the unstructured data deluge. And the numbers are, well, they're kind of mind-blowing.
Go on.
These sources are saying something like 80% of all the data businesses have is this unstructured type. And it's not just growing, it's compounding, like 61% every single year.
Wait, compounding at 61%
Yeah.
annually. That feels almost exponential. That's incredibly fast.
It is. And the sources are pretty clear. This isn't just about finding somewhere to stick it all, right?
No, exactly. It's
Okay.
actually stopping companies from, getting the value out of that information. It's a real bottleneck.
Totally. Your traditional storage, it wasn't designed for that kind of scale or that variety of data coming in so fast. Not efficiently, anyway. You just end up with these silos.
Yeah. Hard to manage, even harder to actually analyze.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I guess, is where this S3-compatible object storage idea fits in. The sources seem to position it as, like, a foundational technology built for this challenge.
That's the angle, yeah. It's a different way of thinking about storing data, fundamentally.
So our mission today, then, for this deep dive, is to pull out from these sources what those key benefits of S3 really are.
Right. And maybe more importantly, figure out which types of customers really, really need this stuff the most. The high-value ones, why they're valuable, and maybe how you'd actually approach them.
Perfect. Okay, let's start right at the beginning. What actually is S3 object storage? Like, at its core, how is it different from, the old way?
Well, what the sources really hammer home is that S3 treats data as these self-contained things called objects.
Objects, okay.
Yeah, so each object has the actual data, plus metadata information about the data and its own unique ID number. It's completely different from, say, a file system with folders inside folders.
Right, like on my laptop, clicking through folders. So S3 doesn't do that. The sources mentioned a flat address space, accessed via APIs.
Exactly. No nested folders. It's flat. And you get at the objects using standard web protocols, HTTP, REST APIs.
Which sounds much simpler for finding things.
Way simpler, especially at scale. Think billions, even trillions of objects. That flat structure means you can find any object pretty quickly without digging through layers of directories.
Okay, and you mentioned metadata. The sources really seem to lean into this, saying it's much more than just like tags for organizing.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really powerful, according to the material. S3 metadata isn't just basic info. You can add really rich custom details. And the key insight is that this turns your raw data into intelligent assets.
Intelligent assets, how so?
Because you can then use that metadata for all sorts of things. Flexible analysis, searching based on specific characteristics inside the data. But even bigger, you can use it to drive automated policies.
Automated policies, like rules. What can they do?
So the sources explain you can set rules based on metadata tags. For example, if this medical scan has a tag saying it's over 7 years old and the patient is deceased, automatically shift it to cheaper archive storage.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe if this financial record object is tagged for SOX compliance, make absolutely sure it can't be changed or deleted for exactly 7 years.
Got it. So it's automating the management, the life cycle, optimizing costs, and really importantly, handling compliance, all because the storage understands the data's context through that metadata.
That's it. You're building intelligence right into the storage layer.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Fundamentally different, built to this new kind of data reality.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk benefits. What are the big advantages driving people to adopt S3 based on what we read?
Well, the first one, given that data deluge we talked about, is just massive scalability. S3 is designed for, well, practically unlimited growth.
Unlimited.
Pretty much. We're
Yeah.
talking potentially exabytes in one system, billions of objects, and it's elastic. It just grows automatically as you add data. No more painful upgrades like the old days.
Which hits that unpredictable growth pain point head on, doesn't it?
Directly. Then there's cost efficiency. It's usually pay as you go, and the cost per gigabyte is generally much lower than traditional block or file storage.
Right.
And some providers, this is interesting, even offer zero egress fees.
Meaning no charge to take your data out? That could be huge.
Absolutely, especially if you're doing big data analytics or moving stuff between clouds. Plus, that policy-driven tiering we mentioned lets you automatically shuffle older data to even cheaper storage classes.
So it's not just cheaper to start with. The model helps you keep costs down down over time. Okay, what about keeping the data safe? Durability, availability, losing data is like the ultimate nightmare.
Yeah, the sources really emphasize this. S3 is engineered for extreme durability. You see figures like 11 nines, 99.999. You get the idea.
11 nines, that's
Yeah.
incredibly reliable.
It means a vanishingly small chance of data loss. And that's achieved by automatically copying data across multiple devices, often in different physical locations. Plus, you get high availability, usually around 99.99%, so you can always access your data when you need it.
So it's super safe and always there. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
What about security? That's got to be top of mind for everyone now.
Oh, definitely. Loads of built-in features. Encryption, both when it's stored and when it's moving.
Mhm.
Really granular access controls things like IMM, ACLs, bucket policies, detailed audit logs so you can see who did what when.
Standard stuff, but essential.
Right. But there's one feature the sources consistently call out as absolutely critical today, S3 object lock.
Object lock. Okay, that sounds important. Related to ransomware and stuff.
It absolutely is. Object lock makes data immutable. It uses the worm principle. Write once, read many.
Write once, read many.
All right. So once you write data and lock it, it literally cannot be changed or deleted for a set time period or even indefinitely if you choose.
So even if ransomware gets in and encrypts everything else.
It can't touch the locked objects. They're tamper-proof.
Wow.
It guarantees you have a clean, uncompromised copy for recovery. The sources frame this as a huge deal for ransomware protection, obviously, but also for meeting those strict compliance rules that demand data integrity and long-term unalterable records. It's moving beyond just security to cyber resilience.
Cyber resilience. I like that. Okay, and the last big benefit mentioned was flexibility in avoiding vendor lock-in. How does S3 help there?
This is actually a really big one, according to the sources. The S3 API, the way applications talk to the storage, has basically become the industry standard.
Like USB or something, everyone uses it.
Pretty much, yeah, for object storage. So an application built for one S3 provider can usually talk to any other S3 compatible storage, cloud, or on-prem.
Ah, so that makes switching easier. Or using multiple clouds.
Exactly. It simplifies migrating data, enables proper multi-cloud strategies, and means there's this huge ecosystem of software backup tools, analytics platforms, you name it, that just works with S3 out of the box. You're not trapped with one vendor's proprietary system.
Okay, so recapping. Massive scale, cost-efficient, incredibly durable and available, strong security with that crucial object lock for immutability and flexibility thanks to the standard API.
Got it. Now, the sources also talked about where you get this S3 capability cloud versus on-premises.
Right, two main ways to deploy it. You've got the big public cloud services, Amazon S3 is the original, but the sources mention others like Cloudflare R2, Wasabi, Backblaze, fully managed, global, scale instantly, minimal fuss.
Easy to get started.
Yeah. But then you have on-premises S3 compatible solutions. Examples given were Object First UDB, Cloudian Hyperstore.
So running S3 in your own data center.
Basically, yes, you get the S3 benefits, the API compatibility, the object model, features like object lock, but running on your own hardware behind your firewall.
What's the advantage there? Lower latency, more control. All of the above, often lower latency because the data doesn't leave your building, potentially enhanced security because it's not directly on the public internet, and you can avoid or reduce those public cloud fees, especially ingress and egress charges for moving data around.
Right, those egress fees can really add up.
They can, so you get S3 goodness, but with the control and maybe cost benefits of keeping it local.
And the sources suggested these aren't necessarily competing options.
No, not at all. They're complementary. This is key. S3 compatibility is like the universal translator between your private cloud and the public cloud. It makes hybrid cloud actually work.
Ah, okay. So you could use public cloud S3 for, say, global distribution or unpredictable bursts,
Right, or for apps already in the cloud.
while using your on-prem S3 for super sensitive data that has to stay local, or for applications running in your data center that need really low latency.
Exactly. It gives you choices, strategic flexibility. And it means S3 isn't just for startups, it's a real option for established companies transforming their IT. It broadens the market significantly.
That makes sense. And it leads us perfectly into those high-value customer segments the sources identified. Because while everyone's drowning in unstructured data, some industries feel the pain more acutely, right? Making them prime candidates.
Definitely. These are the sectors where the data growth is maybe fastest or the consequences of not managing it well are most severe, often due to regulations.
Okay, let's get into those top-tier segments highlighted in the material.
First up, healthcare and life sciences.
No surprise there. They're dealing with just incredible amounts of really sensitive stuff, patient records, EHRs, medical images like X-rays and MRIs, genomic sequencing data, clinical trial info.
And the pressures are immense. Protecting patient privacy is paramount, obviously. Business continuity for hospitals is critical. They need rock-solid audit trails. And increasingly, they want to use all this data for AI diagnostics, drug discovery.
And the retention rules must be complex.
Incredibly. iPay says 6 years minimum for patient records, but some U.S. states say 7, some say keep it until the patient is 21. Life sciences data, like for drug development, might need to be kept 30 years after a drug is approved. Plus, new regulations like DORA are coming in.
Wow. So S3 scale handles the volume, durability protects it, and that object lock immutability is absolutely essential for meeting those decades-long retention and integrity rules for compliance and audits.
Couldn't do it without something like that. Then another top tier, financial services.
Another heavily regulated industry, mountains of sensitive data.
Yep. Transaction records, recorded phone calls, emails, market data feeds, a huge volume. They need it for market analysis, fraud detection, which is getting super sophisticated, plus digital banking initiatives, and just securing customer financial info. And the compliance landscape is just intense.
Like SOX.
Exactly. Sarbanes-Oxley needs 7 years of records stored in that worm format we talked about with clear audit trails. SEC Rule 17A4 for broker-dealers is similar. 3-6 years retention, readily accessible for the first 2, also needing worm. Then you've got GDPR, anti-money laundering rules, know your customer, PCI DSS for card payments, GLBA. It's a minefield.
And the retention can be really long here, too.
Some financial records, the sources mentioned, might need keeping for 50 years or even longer.
50 years. Okay, so again, S3 immutability via object lock is non-negotiable for meeting those SOX and SEC worm rules. Tamper-proof records are critical for audits, plus security, cost-effective archiving.
And this is interesting. The sources noted that these strict compliance needs make these customers very sticky.
Sticky, meaning they don't switch providers easily.
Exactly. Imagine the headache and risk involved in moving decades of regulated data that must remain compliant throughout the process. If your current provider helps you meet those mandates reliably, the cost and sheer terror of non-compliance usually keeps you there. Compliance basically locks them in a good way for the provider.
That makes sense. The sources also mention media and entertainment. That seems a bit different.
Yeah. Less regulated, but dealing with absolutely enormous files. Think 4K, 8K video, raw camera footage, complex visual effects renders, audio masters.
Huge files.
Massive. So their drivers are efficient content creation workflows, distributing this stuff globally and needing fast, low latency access, often from multiple locations. S3's scalability is perfect for vast libraries, and its performance, especially when paired with edge locations or CDNs, is great for delivery.
Okay, and government and public sector was another one.
Right. Managing sensitive citizen information, things like CAD/CAM designs for infrastructure, mapping data, GIS, police body cam footage, historical records. Drivers here are often extremely long-term archiving, sometimes 100 years plus for government records.
100 years. Wow.
Yeah, plus protecting citizen data privacy and often dealing with data residency laws, rules saying certain data must physically stay within the country's borders. Think FISMA in the US, the Data Protection Act in the UK, and similar local laws everywhere.
So S3 offers the secure, compliant, scalable storage, immutability for permanent records, and importantly, geo-distribution options to help meet those data sovereignty rules.
Precisely. And then there's the segment the sources really highlighted as potentially the biggest opportunity right now, and definitely long-term. Technology companies, specifically those working with AI and machine learning.
Ah, the AML explosion.
This is where that phrase, AI is the ultimate data growth multiplier, really hits home. AI models, especially deep learning, need absolutely vast data sets to train effectively. And they're constantly being retrained and refined with new data.
And the sources said more data, kept for longer, actually makes the AI better.
Yeah, more historical data often leads to better pattern recognition, better predictions. Plus, you need high-performance, low-latency storage to feed data quickly into those expensive GPUs doing the training. You can't have your multi-million-dollar AI hardware sitting idle waiting for data.
Makes sense. And there was a stat in there about expected growth.
Yeah, pretty striking. 61% of cloud storage users expect their storage needs to double by 2028 purely because of their AI projects.
Double, just from AI.
It's exponential. Think about storing all the training data versions, saving model checkpoints frequently, maybe daily or weekly, keeping all the results for analysis. It just balloons. And S3 is seen as ideal for building data lakes.
Data lakes.
Yeah, these huge central repositories where you can dump all kinds of data, structured, unstructured at any scale, in its original format. It's the foundation for most serious AML work and high-performance computing. S3 integrates well with the big AI frameworks too, like TensorFlow, PyTorch. This segment has massive ongoing LTV potential because data is their business and its growth is baked in.
Got it. The sources also gave a quick nod to e-commerce and retail and manufacturing and IoT.
Right. Also generating tons of unstructured data, customer logs, website interactions for retail, sensor readings, machine logs for manufacturing. They need scalable storage for analytics, personalization, predicting machine failures, optimizing operations. Strong demand, maybe just slightly less driven by those super strict compliance rules compared to finance or healthcare?
Okay, so we have these key industries. But the sources also pointed out some universal use cases for S3 that cut across almost all sectors. What are those common drivers?
A huge one, especially now, is backup, disaster recovery, and ransomware protection. S3's durability, scale, and cost make it a natural target for backups. But the sources really stress this shift in mindset from just backup to cyber
Cyber
resilience.
resilience. What's the difference, really?
It's more proactive. It's about guaranteeing you have an uncompromisable copy of your data, one that ransomware or even an insider attack can't destroy, and that you can recover from it quickly and reliably.
So it's not just having a copy, but knowing it's safe and usable no matter what.
Exactly. And S3 Object Lock is positioned as absolutely fundamental to achieving that. Making those backup copies immutable is key. Plus, S3 integrates tightly with all the major backup software vendors. Veeam, Commvault, Rubrik are mentioned. So S3 becomes a core part of your modern security posture.
That makes total sense. Okay, another big use case. Long-term archiving and regulatory compliance.
Yep. This leverages those really cheap S3 storage tiers like Glacier and Deep Archive. Perfect for data you have to keep for years or decades, but rarely need to access. It directly supports all those compliance mandates we talked about, EPAS, SOX, government record rules, and the audit trails help you prove you're compliant.
Cloud-native application development was also on the list.
Right. For modern apps built using things like containers or serverless functions, S3 acts as a really scalable and durable place to store persistent data. And because the API is standard, it simplifies development and helps companies modernize their older applications. It's like a basic building block for the cloud era.
And, tying back to the tech segment, big data in AML data lakes.
Absolutely a major driver. S3 is seen as the perfect foundation, cost-effective, scales limitlessly, handles any data type for building those data lakes that fuel advanced analytics, AI model training, and high-performance computing.
And finally, global content distribution and hosting.
Yeah, using S3, often combined with content delivery network or edge locations, lets companies distribute things like websites, software patches, videos, globally with low latency. Better user experience, handle sudden traffic spikes easily.
Okay, so these use cases really show S3 isn't just passive storage, it's enabling core business functions, from basic protection to cutting-edge AI, which brings us to this idea the sources explored, cultivating high lifetime value customers, or LTV.
Right. And the economics here are pretty stark. The sources cite the common wisdom that getting a new customer costs way more, maybe 6 or 7 times more than keeping an existing one.
6 or 7 times, wow.
Yeah. And even small improvements in keeping customers, like just 5%, can apparently boost profits by a huge amount, 25% to 95%, depending on the industry. So high LTV isn't just nice to have, it's really critical. It also shows your product is actually meeting a real ongoing need.
Okay, so what makes an S3 customer likely to have high LTV, according to the sources? What are the drivers?
Several things stand out. First, customers whose business inherently involves predictable, or better yet, exponential data growth.
Like the AML companies.
Exactly. Or companies heavily into IoT. Their usage just naturally goes up and up. And as we heard, AI alone could double storage needs quickly. That's massive built-in LTV.
Okay, what else?
Second, those organizations tangled up in strict compliance and long data retention rules.
Healthcare, finance, government.
Right. They have to keep data for ages, often immutably. The huge cost and risk of failing an audit or getting fined makes them incredibly sticky. As we said, switching providers is a compliance nightmare for them. So the sources say, position S3 as a partner in meeting HIPAA, SOX, GDPR, SEC rules, FISMA, DORA. highlight features like object lock as compliance enablers. That regulatory need creates powerful retention.
So the compliance burden makes them loyal, effectively.
Yeah.
What about companies going through big digital transformations?
Yeah, they're often moving huge amounts of data, building new cloud-native apps, adopting hybrid models. This means they have sustained evolving storage needs, not just a one-off requirement. It's also a chance to sell them related services analytics, better backup. If you get in early as they transform, you can become a long-term strategic partner.
And businesses focused on cost savings and avoiding lock-in.
Definitely. S3's cost effectiveness and the flexibility of the standard API really appeal to companies trying to be efficient and maintain control, avoiding being tied to one big vendor's ecosystem.
And just to underscore it again, companies heavily invested in AML.
Absolutely. Their core business relies on massive, growing, complex data sets. That translates directly to high, predictable, and increasing storage consumption, a recipe for high LTV.
Okay, so if those are the drivers, how do you actually engage these high-value segments? How do you tailor the message?
The sources are clear. Generic pitches fall flat. You have to speak their language, address their specific pain points. For healthcare, talk about patient privacy, high pay compliance, long-term record integrity. For finance, focus on SOX worm requirements, audit readiness, tamper-proof records. Frame S3 is helping them avoid crippling fines and reputational hits.
Connect the features directly to their biggest headaches.
Exactly. Another tactic is to really emphasize the ecosystem compatibility. Since the S3 API is standard, stress how easily it integrates with their existing backup software, their big data tools, their content systems. It lowers the barrier to adoption. It just works with what they already use.
Makes it feel less risky, less disruptive. And for those transforming companies, highlighting hybrid and multi-cloud is key.
Crucial. For many large enterprises, being able to seamlessly blend on-prem S3 with public cloud S3 is essential. It gives them agility, choice, lets them put data where it makes most sense for cost, latency, compliance. You have to show you support that flexibility.
So that's engaging them initially. How do you build a long-term relationship for that sustained LTV?
Customer retention basics, really, but applied strategically. Personalized communication, proactive support, maybe two-way or 4/7 for critical industries, perhaps loyalty programs. But fundamentally, the sources say it's about investing in customer success and building stickiness into the product itself.
Sticky features.
Yeah, things like advanced security options, specialized compliance reporting tools, deeper integrations with other key software, things that make it genuinely harder or riskier for them to justify leaving because your solution solves their problems so well.
And then there's upselling and cross-selling.
Big opportunity there. Existing customers are way more likely to buy more the source's cereal, suggest 60–70% more likely. So offer them more capacity, different storage tiers as their access patterns change, or add-on services like data analytics, enhanced security monitoring, maybe AI services that leverage the data they're already storing with you.
Makes sense.
And the sources specifically call out usage-based pricing or tier models as natural LTV boosters. As the customer grows, especially with AI driving that growth, their spending increases organically. Your revenue is tied to their success.
The pricing model aligns with their growth. And the sources even map specific S3 features to compliance rules, didn't they?
Yeah, showing exactly how object lock delivers worm for SOX and SEC rules, how encryption and access controls help with HIPAA and GDPR privacy, how audit logs prove compliance, how geo-distribution helps with data residency, just providing concrete proof points.
Okay, this has been really thorough. We've gone from the core data problem all the way to building long-term value. Let's try and wrap up with the main recommendations and the outlook from these sources. Who should you target and what's the key message?
Well, based on the analysis, the sources clearly prioritize engaging those top tiers. Tech ML first, because of that explosive inherent data growth, then healthcare and life sciences and financial services driven hard by those non-negotiable long-term compliance needs that create stickiness.
Right, with a strong second tier in media, government, manufacturing, and maybe e-commerce emerging.
Exactly, and the messaging has to be tailored. For tech AI, enable innovation, scale your data lakes, performance for GPUs. For the regulated folks, achieve bulletproof compliance, ensure cyber resilience, avoid fines and risk. For the transformers, get hybrid multi-cloud flexibility, avoid lock-in. But underlying it all is that core value prop: infinite scale, cost efficiency, unmatched data protection.
And looking forward, product development needs to keep pace.
Absolutely. The sources suggest ongoing investment in things like tighter AML integrations, even more sophisticated compliance features tailored to specific regulations, better tools for managing hybrid cloud setups, and deeper cybersecurity tie-ins. That's how you stay relevant and valuable.
And finally, you can't just set and forget. Continuous monitoring is needed.
Definitely. With data growing at 61% annually, AI doubling needs, regulations constantly shifting, you have to keep watching. Analyze how customers are using the storage, track regulatory changes, maybe even use AI to predict future needs. Being proactive helps you build those sticky features that solve problems before they hit the customer.
Okay, so we started with that massive unstructured data challenge. So how S3 object storage offers a fundamental solution with its architecture and benefits like immutability, understood how AI is turbocharging that need, identified those key high-value industries where compliance and resilience are paramount, creating really sticky opportunities, and then looked at how you build lasting relationships with them through tailored value and long-term thinking.
Yeah, understanding how all those pieces fit together, the tech, the data growth, the regulations, the business needs, that's really the key to navigating this whole space effectively, isn't it?
It really is. And, that leaves us with a final thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on based on everything we've unpacked today.
Mhm.
Thinking about this relentless data growth, especially driven by AI and these ever-tightening regulations in critical sectors like healthcare and finance, how might the actual definition of what counts as truly compliant storage or even truly resilient storage continue to change in the next few years? And what could that mean for how companies need to approach these valuable sectors down the road? Something to think about.